The wind still stirs across the steppes, carrying the haunting legacy of the warrior queen who brought even the most powerful to their knees. After her son's death, betrayed by treachery, she took Cyrus's severed head and plunged it into blood, fulfilling her dark vow. In the bleak heart of ancient Central Asia, where the winds howled across endless steppes and mountains stood like jagged blades against the sky, a queen forged her name into the annals of history, etched in the blood of the most powerful man the world had ever known. But this wasn't just any blood. It was the blood of Cyrus the Great, a man whose empire stretched farther than any before him, and whose ambitions knew no bounds. This is the tale of Tomyris, queen of the Masag, and how she summoned a vengeance so terrible that it would haunt the world for centuries to come. To understand this grim tale, we must first understand the man who dared to cross her path. Cyrus, in the 6th century BCE, was no mere conqueror. His empire, one that reached from the Mediterranean to the Hindu Kush, from the Caucasus to the Persian Gulf, was like a shadow looming over all of civilization. He was not just a ruler, he was a force of nature, reshaping the world around him. But beneath his image as a liberator, respected for granting conquered peoples freedom and autonomy, lay an insatiable hunger for power. His image as a benevolent ruler masked a ruthless ambition that could not be sated. By 530 BCE, after crushing kingdoms that had stood for millennia, Cyrus set his eyes on the northern plains of Central Asia, beyond the Jaxartes River. There, amidst the vast, untamed wilderness, lived the Masag, nomadic warriors who feared nothing and no one. They knew no walls, no cities, only the open sky and endless horizons, and ruling them, with an iron fist and a heart full of wrath, was a woman who would make Cyrus regret every moment of his conquest. Tomyris. Little is known about Tomyris's early life, for history has often ignored the lives of women, even those who held such power. But we know this: when her husband died, Tomyris did not fade into the shadows. She took command of her people, leading them with unyielding strength, not because of birthright, but by her own will and prowess. When Cyrus sent his emissaries with a proposal of marriage, it was not an offer of love, it was a ploy to subdue her people. But Tomyris saw through the deception. Her refusal came swiftly, and with it, a warning that would be ignored. Cyrus, enraged by the rejection, marched his legions into her lands. He thought her people were nothing more than barbaric nomads, easily crushed beneath the weight of his army. But he underestimated her, and in doing so, he sealed his own fate. The winds of vengeance had already begun to howl. In the shadows of history, where women's names were often erased or forgotten, Tomyris's rise to power came like a dark storm. Few records remain of her early years, as most were penned by men who deemed the lives of queens, especially those of nomadic tribes, unworthy of note. What is known, however, is this: when her husband died, Tomyris did not fade into the background like so many other queens before her. Instead, she seized the throne, and with it, the reins of power. Unlike those who ruled only as temporary figureheads, she led with a fierce hand, commanding her armies and earning the respect of her people not by bloodline, but by the sheer force of her will. When emissaries from Cyrus the Great arrived at her nomadic court, they came not with diplomacy but with deception. They brought a proposal dressed in the language of peace, a marriage offer, masked as a political union. To any outsider, it seemed sensible. Tomyris would remain queen, but now of a Persian province, and her people would be absorbed into Cyrus's vast empire, their blood spared. But Tomyris was not so easily fooled. Beneath the offer of marriage, she saw only the cold steel of conquest, the subtle art of swallowing her people without a battle. Her answer was swift, decisive, and laced with defiance. The Masag will remain free, and I will be neither wife nor subject to the Persian king. The words stung Cyrus deeply, like a knife driven into his ambition. This was a man who had bent entire nations to his will, and yet he could not bear being denied by a woman, a barbarian queen of the steppes. The rejection twisted something within him. If he could not have the Masag through diplomacy, he would take them by force. Fury clouded his judgment, and he commanded his generals to gather an army, a vast war machine, to march into Tomyris's lands beyond the Jaxartes River. News of Cyrus's preparations spread like wildfire through Tomyris's camp, and she acted swiftly. Without hesitation, she sent a messenger to Cyrus, carrying a message laced with prophecy. "King of the Persians, abandon your enterprise, for you cannot know if in the end it will bring you benefit. Rule your people, and let me rule mine. But I know you will not listen, for you are incapable of peace." Tomyris's words were clear, a warning no one, not even Cyrus, would heed. And so, the fates of both would be sealed in a storm of blood and ambition. Tomyris's warning fell on deaf ears. Cyrus, blind with arrogance, pushed forward with his army, constructing bridges over the Jaxartes River to invade the land of the Masag. The queen, however, did not rise to stop his advance. Instead, she allowed the Persians to cross into her realm, a land she knew intimately, yet was foreign and dangerous to them. It was a strategic move, a trap laid by fate itself. In his confidence, Cyrus made a grave mistake. He listened to the advice of Croesus, the fallen king of Lydia, and crafted a plan based on his assumption that the Masag's greatest weakness lay in their unfamiliarity with wine. The Persian army, with their typical disdain for their enemies, set up a camp with minimal provisions, but left behind abundant food and wine. They feigned a retreat, luring the nomads into a false sense of victory. The Masag, led by Tomyris's son, Sparapisses, stumbled upon the camp, victorious at first. They began drinking the wine, oblivious to its effects. The Masag had never tasted such a poison, and before long, they were intoxicated, their senses dulled. As the moon rose high, a deadly silence fell. The Persians, waiting in the shadows, launched their attack. The drunken Masag were no match for the Persians' precision. Chaos engulfed the camp, and many fell, including young Sparapisses. When he awoke, realizing the betrayal of his own actions, he begged for release from his chains. But in the depths of despair and honor, he chose a different fate, one that would forever haunt the queen's soul. He took his own life, sealing the curse of vengeance that would soon consume Cyrus. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. One subscribe from you will be a huge encouragement for us to grow the channel and create even better content in the future. A heartfelt thank you to my dear friends for quietly watching my videos. The news of her son's death hit Tomyris like a bolt of lightning, shattering any remnants of sorrow. But grief, though fierce, did not paralyze her. Instead, it morphed into something darker, colder, and icy fury that radiated through her very soul. The rage was unyielding, calculated, and relentless. She sent a second messenger to Cyrus, her words cold and sharp like a blade. "Bloodthirsty man, do not take pride in what you have done. You used wine, the poison that drives men to madness, to conquer my son, not in fair combat. Hear me well, leave this land and return to your empire, forgiving the injury of capturing 1/3 of my army with trickery. If you refuse, I swear by the sun, Lord of the Masag, I will quench your thirst for blood." But Cyrus, intoxicated not by wine, but by his own legend, dismissed her warning. This was a man who had crushed kingdoms and brought nations to their knees. A woman, a savage of the steppes, could not stand in the way of his unstoppable quest for glory. His heart burned with an arrogance so immense it blinded him to the danger ahead. This would be no different than any other conquest. What followed was a battle that would be etched into history as one of the greatest defeats any empire had ever suffered. Tomyris, driven by the fury of a mother's revenge, rallied all the Masag tribes. Her warriors, hardened by life on the steppes, were masters of the land. They could ride for days without stopping, shooting arrows with unerring precision. The Persians, accustomed to heavy infantry and siege tactics, were ill-prepared for the speed and ferocity of the Masag horsemen. The battle that ensued was swift, brutal, and decisive. Cyrus fought with the same bravery that had made him legendary, charging into battle with unwavering confidence. But even the greatest conqueror the world had ever known could not overcome the combination of hostile terrain, superior strategy, and the unstoppable wrath of a mother seeking vengeance. And then the unimaginable happened. Cyrus the Great fell. The man who had built the largest empire in history, whose name struck terror into the hearts of kings, was defeated in the plains beyond the Jaxartes. But it was what happened after his death that ensured his legend would be overshadowed. Tomyris ordered her men to search for his body, and when they found it, she demanded his head. The severed head would become the final symbol of vengeance, a dark tale to be rattled through the ages. What followed was an act as symbolic as it was terrible. Tomyris, driven by the cold fury of vengeance, took a Winniskanan animal skin container used to store liquids and ordered it to be filled with human blood. The very notion sent a chill through the air as she grasped the severed head of Cyrus by its hair, holding it in her hand like a trophy of triumph and loss. With a slow, deliberate motion, she plunged his head into the blood, her voice ringing out in the stillness, proclaiming, "I live and have conquered you in battle, but you have destroyed me by taking my son through trickery. Now, as I promised, I shall quench your thirst for blood." The words echoed in the silence, and in that moment, time seemed to stop. This act was not born of mere cruelty. It was a brutal, symbolic act, one that would forever change the course of history. By immersing Cyrus's head in blood, Tomyris turned his own thirst for power into a grotesque, poetic metaphor. A king who had spilled the blood of so many was now drenched in the blood of his victims. The message was unmistakable. Even the mightiest conquerors, driven by unchecked ambition, will eventually meet their end. But then, as with many ancient tales, we are left to question the truth of this narrative. History, as it often does, distorts the line between fact and legend. Herodotus, the first great historian of the Western world, wrote this account some 75 years after the events. Relying on oral reports to reconstruct the past, we know for certain that Cyrus did die in battle against a northern nomadic people. Later inscriptions mention that his body was buried in Pasargadae, his capital, which raises doubts about the exact details of the decapitation. Modern historians and archaeologists debate the truth behind the tale. Some argue that the story was embellished by the Greeks, who had a vested interest in portraying their Persian enemies as defeated by barbarian forces. Others suggest that the portrayal of a great conqueror vanquished by a woman may have been a moral narrative, one designed to warn of the dangers of unchecked pride. Whatever the truth, it is clear that Tomyris's victory over Cyrus left a lasting mark on history. Evidence from various sources confirms the existence of the Masag, a powerful confederation of nomadic tribes in Central Asia. Beyond Herodotus, Roman historian Justin described Tomyris as a queen, avenging her realm, not just defending her people's freedom. This frame shifts the focus from Tomyris as a passive figure to one of active vengeance and agency. The death of Cyrus was far-reaching in its consequences. His son, Cambyses too, inherited his father's vast empire, but lacked the political acumen that had made Cyrus so formidable. Obsessed with the conquest of Egypt, Cambyses neglected internal stability, leading to civil war after his untimely death. Eventually, Darius I took control, restoring order and expanding the empire once more. As for Tomyris, her fate is largely unknown. The records of history, dominated by the stories of male kings and warriors, rarely followed the tales of women, even those who brought the greatest of conquerors to their knees. Some legends suggest that Tomyris ruled for many years in peace, securing the safety of her people by ensuring no empire would dare attack the Masag again. Others claim she was eventually defeated by rival tribes. However, what is incontestable is the legacy of her victory. In a time when women's names were often erased from the chronicles of power, Tomyris ensured that her name would not be remembered as the wife or mother of some great man, but as a warrior queen who defeated the most powerful conqueror of her time. Tomyris's story challenges the very foundation of what it means to hold power. In an era when women rarely had a voice in statecraft, a barbarian queen demonstrated strategic brilliance and military leadership far superior to that of the ruler of the greatest empire the world had ever known. Her victory stands as a stark contrast to the prevailing narrative of power and civilization, representing the eternal conflict between the sedentary, civilized world of the Persian Empire and the nomadic peoples who thrived on the harsh steppes. The Persian Empire, with its cities, roads, and irrigation systems, was seen by many as the epitome of civilization. The Masag, on the other hand, lived in tents, rode horses, and embraced a lifestyle of constant movement, what the Greeks and Persians alike would call barbarism. Yet, it was the barbarian who triumphed over the so-called civilized world. This pattern would repeat through history, from the Huns' clash with Rome to the Mongols' destruction of China. Cyrus's head, drenched in the blood of his own victims, remains one of the most potent symbols in ancient history. It serves as a reminder that even the mightiest of empires have their limits, that unchecked ambition leads to inevitable destruction, and that sometimes the most fitting revenge is one that mirrors the crime that came before it. Tomyris did not simply defeat Cyrus, she transformed him into a symbol. The conqueror who had spilled so much blood in the name of empire was now reduced to a head, bathed in the blood he had once sought to control. This act of vengeance was a warning to all future emperors, kings, and tyrants. The thirst for power, territory, and glory can never be sated, and those who seek to quench it may find themselves consumed by their own ambitions. When we think of the great conquerors of antiquity, names like Alexander, Caesar, and Genghis Khan come to mind. Tomyris, however, is rarely remembered. Yet, her victory over Cyrus deserves to be acknowledged as one of the most decisive moments in history. It stands as proof that even the most entrenched narratives of power can be challenged and rewritten. Though there are no monuments to Tomyris, no cities bearing her name, and no empire tracing its lineage to her, her story endures. The winds still blow across the steppes where the Masag once galloped, carrying with it the echo of a queen who bathed the head of the conqueror in the blood he so desperately coveted. Her tale remains a reminder of the limits of power and the terrible price of boundless ambition. If you like this video, please give it a like or share it with others. Your support is a huge motivation to help me grow the channel. Feel free to leave a comment sharing your thoughts on this story. Thank you for your silent support.